Thank you so much, Ellen, for that kind of introduction. And yes, I am very excited to be here and excited to come with some of my Lewis County partners. Part of what's been so exciting is seeing so many of the parallels, and that you have a structure of bringing people together around the state and then letting people find out what they already have and their resources in the community, and then linking with extra training and resources at the state level and sharing with each other. So it's very exciting to be here. Anyway, just from having been there in the fall, I know you guys are bound for really, really good things. I'm so happy to be here with three of our partners from Lewis County, which started in 2010, and you'll hear more about their community asset mapping and where it's led them. Jennifer Pauley is a general pediatrician. She's up at the top, the image up here. She's now the medical director for Northwest Pediatrics, which is a rural health clinic, and has really been a leader in our state in figuring out how to improve care for kids. They've done it for kids with autism. They've been leaders in integrating behavioral and mental health into the practice, nutritionists, everything. Whenever there is a need, I think they just figure out how can we help the children in our community. Jennifer's also been with the group from almost the very first days, and she's the co-lead. She'll talk more about the school medical autism review team, or SMART team. And then we have Raina Austin, and you see I have this picture. I don't know if if I'm blocking it right here, but Raina is in the right, the very right of the picture below. And Raina is a teacher at one of the two main early intervention centers in the county. She's been doing work there for many years and worked closely with school districts and helped with the initial process of doing community asset mapping. And then Allison Jenkins, who is on the left of that bottom picture, is also a family resources coordinator, which is what we call the people in the birth to 3 programs here who serve families who have children with developmental delays. And so between Raina and Allison, they work with all the school districts in Lewis County. She's another founding board member. The woman in the middle here is Nikki, who is the nurse at Jennifer's practice, who does the care coordination for their SMART team. So, with that, I think I'm going to welcome Jennifer to talk a little bit about Lewis County, so you have a sense of how their community compares to yours. So, Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you all for inviting us. Yeah, just a little bit. You can see on the Washington State map, toward the bottom and west side is Lewis County. We are like the 6th largest county, but we're one of there's 39 counties. We're the 36 as far as out of 39 as far as poverty, right? So it's a very large county as far as square miles, and our population's you can read that at about 79,000 people. The population density is really, you can see the blue line up the map, that represents our I-5 corridor. It's the main north to south highway right on the west coast. And so the main population density, about a third of the people at least live right along that. There are 2 towns, that's where we are, Centralia and Chehalis. So it's interesting that it's to get to a major medical center, or what used to be to get a diagnosis of autism, is between an hour and a half in either direction. So Seattle Children's is an hour and a half north, Portland is an hour and a half south, and then we have another children's hospital about an hour away. It is a very medically underserved population, and I won't read you all those statistics. But we are, as Kate pointed out, a rural health clinic because of the demographics here. Our population is largely Caucasian. It's the last statistic showed that we are about 10% Hispanic. I would say in our office, that's actually probably about 15 to 20% of our patients, and the Hispanic population is growing. It is a fairly, you can see the educational level of our population. And there are a lot of things that go along with poverty, of course, we have here, which is understanding issues, access to care, not wanting to really travel outside of our area, a high birth rate, a lot of kids living in the large free and reduced lunch. In some of our local schools, it's actually over 90%. And of course, I think really interesting too, just to put us again in context, we have one of the second highest food insecurity rate in the state. So there's a lot of people that are marginalized, living on the edge, and we have it's not on the demographics, but we have a significant undocumented population as well. That's a whole nother issue. So that is, that's a little bit about us. And I think some of those demographics and understanding who we are is how sort of a lot of these, the community asset mapping and the need for trying to figure out how to reach the needs of kids for so many things, but especially with autism, as we formed the coalition in 2010, I think. So I will give that to Raina because she can sort of explain a little bit more of that. But it came out of the need that we had and the inaccessibility or difficult accessibility that we had to resources.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's a great overview of explaining the community. And so Raina, who was part of that very first, we'll talk as we were planning with our Virginia partners for what would be helpful for you. We realized that, you know, Lewis County Autism Coalition has been working for 10 years. And if we just sort of come in and start saying, well, this is what we're doing now, it's like you're starting at the beginning and everything, it's like a snowman. It starts, small and then it builds, but you're building on your initial passions and what do you need. And so we are going to have Raina now talk about what the community initially was really moved to do and where the energy was. So Raina, do you want to, and you can tell me when to shift to the next slide too.
Okay, thank you. When we met 10 years ago, we had a wide range of people that were there, our special ed directors, medical providers, our county social and health services department, people from our local mental health system. One of the other things that I have been thinking about and what was really important is we also had a grant writer that became part of our group. Then that really opened us up on being able to do some other things. So it's one of the things I can say, if you can find a grant writer, that's really helps a lot. But with it came out of what the priorities was developing a community roadmap for parents and providers. They wanted to know, providers didn't know who to refer to, and parents didn't know where to go, what to do, what's the next steps. So, we had the pyramid, we looked at it, and then we created the roadmap, which Allison will talk about more later. Also, the communication between all the providers, because we're so rural, we all work together. So that is one of the big pluses we had in place already, was being able to communicate with each other. And if we had a question, we just would go ask, or, do you know who to go to find this out? So it really helped a lot. And then also the increased childcare provider awareness to the red flags, that was that other part of that mapping system we did. So I don't know if the next one then, Kate. So what we wanted to do is expand the community knowledge and how to use like the MChat. Allison's going to talk about that in a little bit, of going out to daycare providers, and we tried to figure out what to do. And also then our diagnostic team. As Jennifer said, families going that even hour up to Tacoma is a major thing. They don't have money for the gas. And when I say an hour, that's only from, if you live in Chehalis, Centralia, my program serves all our rural schools. So we go 150 miles out. Our county's very long and not quite as wide. So some of those families who were coming from our east end of the county, that was just, going that far is too overwhelming. They would be the no-shows. Basically you schedule an appointment and they don't show up. So anyway, so that was kind of part of it. I don't know if.
Well, that's great.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Kate.
Yeah, no, that is really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. And then we'll have maybe we'll have Jennifer, when we get to it, we'll talk some about the medical piece, about the school and medical.
Great. And then we'll try to go back to, after
Yeah.
we talk about the roadmaps,
Yes.
we'll go back to you, Keith.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Good. So and then I'll share my screen and Allison can talk. But let me just ask Allison this question that we thought you guys would be interested in, and that is that, you know, as Raina was talking, that the CAM process revealed people were really confused about where to go if they had developmental concerns. And one of the first things that the Lewis County Autism Coalition did was to develop a roadmap for providers and then one for families. And so, Allison, do you want to talk about that and
Sure.
some of the other trainings that grew out of that work? And I will try and share my screen.
Okay. Yeah, so even backing up a step, I think part of the conversation was, do people even know what to ask? A lot of our families, Jennifer shared some of the statistics about some haven't even graduated high school, or many in our area, a lot of young moms. And so part of the roadmap thing was for the families was to figure out what they know about development in general, as well as then leading into the autism piece. So families were asked what they need help with, what do they already know, and where they get their current information. And then we also asked who needs this information about development, about autism, and where do young families with children go, so that we know where to distribute these roadmaps. So 2 maps were developed, and I guess, okay, let's start with the medical one there. Thank you.
Okay.
So on that, we listed like typical development as well as early signs of autism. And then it listed some of the DMS-4 criteria, screening tools, and at-risk signs. And we also provided local, state, and national resources for the medical providers, including where the diagnostic centers are, and then early childhood programs and screening agencies. And this was distributed to mostly medical providers in the area. And this, the roadmaps were kind of created or put together by Mary Schmellick, who was at the time a nurse practitioner at pediatric clinic, and Dr. Pauly at Northwest Pediatrics, and coalition members helped provide some of the like the resources and the contact information. And then the other roadmap for the general public and families, we listed questions for parents to think about. Do you know about typical development? Do you know if your child's reaching milestones? Do you know about early signs of autism? And then gave them questions to ask and who to ask the questions of. And then also listed specific local resources and agencies for screenings, like school districts, early intervention providers. And we listed state and national resources and diagnostic agencies, and some internet resources. Many families, of course, look to the internet, and we wanted to provide some reliable sources, CDC, Autism Speaks, for example. And then distribution of this roadmap, mostly by the coalition members, which was a wide range of agencies, school providers and such, the medical community, parent-to-parent support program. So everybody got it out to people in places across the county, like WIC offices, pediatric offices, churches, community bulletin boards, and the school districts. So it really was a grassroots effort to figure out what they need and how to get it out to people. And that's where having all these agencies together at a table helped with that distribution. So that's about the roadmaps. And then as far as, do you want me to continue on with like trainings that came out of that?
Yeah, just I think for like a minute or two, and then we'll
Sure.
do the video, because I realize we have
Okay.
still a little time.
So some of the early intervention providers went to daycares and provided information about developmental screenings and the MCHAT and some other autism screeners. And the community college here has been a great partner. So we, early intervention providers, also have attended their trainings for childcare providers and staff about sensory issues, feeding issues, meeting milestones, that type of thing. So kind of looking at what resources we have and how we can access them to spread the word as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys have done amazing work just collaborating and making sure that everyone knows how to do developmental screening and yeah, it's really great. Keith, do you have the?
Great.
So the Autism Coalition, when they first started, it was deciding on what do we want to accomplish in Lewis County. And part of it was to be there for families, to give the support they needed, to let them know what services there were out there and how to get to those services. And really talking to a lot of families. Part of the thing that they had problems with was the length of time that it took waiting to get diagnosed. Going to Mary Bridge, Seattle Children's Hospital, it may be 6 months to 18 months wait.
A statistic that was just amazing to me that I learned from Bill Weitzman was the occurrence of autism in Lewis County. And to look around the room and understand the resources allowed us to begin to understand the opportunities.
Out of that came our SMART team, which is School Medical Autism Resource Team. We started in about 2013, I think it was, and with the help of Dr. Tripp, he gave us the support that was needed to say, you guys can do this down here and start diagnosing. The SMART team meets once a month, and then Mary comes once a month to Northwest Pediatrics and sees approximately 4 to 5 children that the team feels is now ready for her to look at them. Out of looking at how better to help these families, we created the link and the link coordinator position. The link is what we considered linking newly diagnosed children and families who need the support with services in the county.
Our son wasn't diagnosed until he was 9 years old. He was a delayed walker, a delayed talker, and put in special delayed education courses in his early years. It was a really hard time. I remember I went to the bedroom and locked myself in there probably for 4 or 5 hours and cried a lot, and then started doing as much research as I could. And through that, I discovered the Lewis County Autism Coalition board. I've never ever been a part of a support group in my life, and that was a little bit scary. And that was really the beginning of what I call my A-team family, meeting women mostly that have children on the spectrum, all different ages.
After my diagnosis, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't talk about it. I wasn't open to talk about it to people, and I was really kind of angry at the world, so to speak, mainly due to the fact that I've been going and seeing professionals, mental health professionals, doctors, evaluated thousands, hundreds if not thousands of times from age 8 to 18 when it came to it, and I finally was diagnosed. They're like, okay, this makes sense, but now he's aged out of all the options we had for him.
One of the very first things that came out after the community asset mapping and the coalition started, what families really wanted was something for their children. So the summer play group was one of the first things that started. Part of it is training for the parents. They'll have special speakers while then the children have activities that are going on. We had in November our 8th annual conference. It started out as something parents wanted. It's just trying to give the support they need and information. We'll have a main presenter and then break out into groups, and it's set based for families, school districts, We've had state people come, parents, as I mentioned, and those on the spectrum. It's just trying to give the support they need and information.
There were educators there. There were people that were in the medical profession. There were parents that had sons and daughters that had disabilities, people that shop with us, people that I recognized. And before I knew it, I felt that I had finally found that connection, people that could help us continue to serve the community.
It helped me mainly come out of my shell and mainly open up about my experiences, and mainly get me to tell my story, which, like I said, it was something that up until that point, I had never really shared my story with people, and being at going to those meetings and meeting people, kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of accept that this is what I have, but it's not going to define me as a person, and it's not going to change anything about my personality or anything. It's just something that's a part of my life.
Since this is our 10-year celebration, we're looking forward and doing a lot of planning for what the future will look like. And we would really like to see the next 10 years cultivating inclusion for families with children with disabilities and children with autism. Also, we would like to make sure that there is early screening and that the children in the schools are able to get the support that they need for early intervention and more screenings. As a parent of an adult child, teenage child with autism, we see a lot of gaps in our community of services. And so the coalition is really trying to look at what they can do to help support teen adult self-sufficiency and advocacy.
So the Autism Coalition, when they first started, it was deciding on
Great. Wow, I hope you guys enjoyed that video as much as I did. It's a really special community, Lewis County, and I think just shows that every community can bring that energy together if they have a way to come together, a mechanism, which you do in Virginia now with this grant, with your community partners who are stepping up, and you can learn from each other. So what Lewis County did is inspiring, and it's something that's available, I think, to every community with a little bit of support and structure. Okay, so I wanted to ask Raina to talk a little bit about developing awareness and resources, what came out of coming together. I know in that video you saw the grocery store owner who's now become a huge proponent of finding jobs for people with autism in his store and doing other things, but there are many other resources that you've also identified, but that started small, like you said, with that camp. Do you want to talk for a couple minutes about that, Raina?
Okay. Yes, one of the first things then was the parents, school doesn't go in the summer and their children needed something to kind of continue. So working with our community college and their dean of child and family studies, we came up with the summer play group. It was all run by volunteers. We also contacted through one of our vocational colleges, which is an hour away. And they had their certified occupational therapy assistants came down and volunteered to help with those kids, so that then they were getting learning also of working with children on the spectrum and sensory issues and everything. And then while the kids were having their activities, we brought people in for trainings for the parents. I think, Jennifer, you did one on potty training. We would do sensory, nutrition, just whatever the parents were really interested. We tried to find a speaker to come in and talk to them during that time. So it went from one time a week for 6 weeks. We had a couple years where it was twice a week. again for that 6 weeks. So, and then this summer in our new time now, still trying to figure out if anything can occur from that. That went from age 3 to about 9. So then for the other kids, we had our county DD coordinator created a week-long summer camp for those from 9 to like 17. It was held at one of the local schools, had activities and volunteers again for those kids. And that now has kind of changed a little bit. We've gone into, we have a group that is called Spark, and right now my mind's blank as to what Spark stands for, but it is those older teens and adults. They do different activities, but every year they have a summer sports camp. So getting all of those kids in learning about basketball, baseball, soccer, they do art projects. So it's kind of gone into that. One of our other things that the families wanted was a social skills class. First of all, what started with one of our local ABA centers started it. It's now gone on into, again, the community college has been doing it, and they meet once a week and work on social skills training for those kids. So,
yeah, it's amazing how, by coming together and by really including families and individuals with autism in your planning, you're really able to identify what the needs are, and then you have all these other people with resources who can figure out how to meet that together. It's really awesome.
So, one of the things I wanted to say, because unless I missed it, I don't know if you had someone from your Infant and Toddler Connection of Virginia, your Birth to 3 program, but I think Allison and I can both really speak. Birth to 3 programs typically have great communication with the pediatricians around your area. So you've got that link already. And if you can get some of them involved, it's going to help you, I believe, even more with bringing your programs and getting people together. They know where those resources are, and then you have your parent-to-parent. We created the link because the families that had children on the autism spectrum wanted a little bit more than parent-to-parent. Now a lot of our activities are going together with parent-to-parent and our link coordinator. We have coffee and conversations, just because now we don't meet. They're doing it virtually, and they've just now started a virtual happy hour on Fridays. So again, things that can just happen. It doesn't cost lots of money, and getting some of those at least people together, and then you can hear from them what else they want.
Yeah. Thank you. Really exciting, all the stuff going on. Well, I know we wanted to hear from Jennifer too, because I know all your communities have been really interested in how, to close the loops and how to have medical and school people work better together for families. And so we're delighted to have Jennifer Polly talk about what's happened in Lewis with medical and school and early intervention people working together and learning. Oh, and you're muted. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yeah. And I'll be in respect of time, because I know we don't have a lot left and we want time for comment, right? So I'll try to be very brief. I was just going to say 2 things, maybe globally. One is, right, Lewis County is special because it's us, just like you're special, but there is, in a sense, nothing special, right? Just a bunch of people that live in a rural community, and the specialness of small communities and rural communities is that we know how to scrap and work together, right? And I think it's the other thing that links in, and that will come to the medical autism review team, is passion and recognizing need, and then finding people that are willing to carry the ball. So that comes to another thing. We were asking parents what their needs are from the medical community, I think, and obviously the needs for the community. The question was, how in the world do we get kids diagnosed, right, with autism. Number one, I think 10 years ago, what we knew about autism or understood in our county is a world of difference now because of the Autism Coalition and just obviously just knowledge in general. And I think the big need, as was mentioned before, was that it was actually 12 to 18 months to get a kid diagnosed. And even then, half the time that they would get to a center, they didn't have the stuff they needed. They didn't have their IEPs, or they didn't have a copy of this, or they couldn't get an appointment because they couldn't pull together the resources just to get somewhere. So what's called now the SMART team, or the School Medical Autism Review Team, formed out of that need. We're lucky to work with a very gracious neurodevelopmental pediatrician at one of our medical centers, and about an hour away. And conversations, we said we need to do something different. This doesn't work. Our people can't travel. What are we going to do? And so we brainstormed and came up with this idea. He would come and do trainings with us, and we would, the thing about one of the questions, what did we learn from this? Like, meeting together, we had a champion from the school district, right, the head of special services from our county school, and then some other people on the coalition, that we said, how about if we start meeting together and figure out how we can get these kids diagnosed? Because everybody, right, a pediatrician has a small piece of the puzzle, right? Boy, if that's one thing I've learned, I mean, I knew it probably, but it's even more clear. We have such a small piece of the puzzle. It is a critical piece, right, for getting kids to diagnosis. So what we realized, that coming together, each person, it's like anything in life. Every kid has multifacets, right? So if I can get the early intervention piece and the speech piece and the school psych piece and the whatever piece, and someone that understands how to read a darn IEP, because I never know all that stuff. I know more now, but I didn't know what it meant. If we could come to the table about a kid and figure out how to evaluate, we could get everything together. And then, so that was one thing, just getting the resources and information for the child together. So what we did is we decided to bring this team together, people, to try to expedite diagnosing kids. Then what we said is, okay, how can we get that? So we partnered with our developmental pediatrics group and said, would you be willing to come down here once a month? Would you just ask, or even virtual? Of course, you could do it virtually now. If we have these kids that we've done everything, and we've done whatever screening tool, the SRS is what we use. We have all that in place. We've developed a screening tool based on the DSM-4 at the time. Now it's DSM-5. If we get all those, we can screen out kids that look like they're pretty likely, and it would make your job easier, and it could be quick. We did, by the way, just sidebar, I don't know if you guys have something called Center of Excellence in Virginia State, where a pediatrician, okay, you don't, then I wouldn't go there. So it's just coming together. I think we learned as we started doing this, and they were willing to support us, we learned that, even I learned as a pediatrician, the language that I use around education and the questions that I ask my patients, I could do such a better job getting the right language and questions in place. And also from the educators, I learned what questions to have the parents ask. Like, how do they ask in the correct way, how do they ask for help? How do they do that? So I think what happened is we came together, we started seeing, we can get these kids the information done. We had a nurse that we, initially our coalition paid for someone to be the sort of hub to make all the contacts with family. So the two pieces for us is we had someone coordinating this as patients got referred in, that there were questions. And we worked with the University of Washington research student who helped us develop what's called the SMART tool. So it's a tool that's based, and it's on our website, Washington State. Anyway, but it's based on the DSM-5 criteria, so that when, as a pediatrician, I was seeing a patient, I could actually give them this tool and say, hey, can you answer these questions? And then they would do it, and then we would get the school piece and the SLP, all those things that came out of that. And I can, if anybody wants to talk to me too offline at some point, that's fine. But anyway, it was really great, because I think what we learned is that each of us were essential to this. It changed how we asked questions. It changed the things that we did. We were better able to advocate for students, and it helped us, most importantly, get to our goal of getting kids sometimes diagnosed within 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. We have quite a waiting list right now on our SMART team. We get lots of referrals, but yeah, it's been a game changer for our county. So I'll stop talking because I could go on.
Well, and we could go on listening. Yeah, it is really exciting what you've done. I know we don't have that much time, so I know people probably have questions. So why don't I open it up? Does anybody have questions for any of our speakers?
Yeah, we'd like for you to ask your questions out loud. It'll be easier than typing them in and reading them out loud. So just unmute yourself and ask a question. If we don't get to your question or you want to type in something, the panel team has, Kate and the team have agreed to answer all the questions, and we'll get that back to you if you have questions. But I'll turn it back over to Kate if there are any questions. I know while people are maybe thinking, Kate, Raina, you were mentioning about the community colleges. So they had occupational therapy assistant students that got involved, because I know Lynchburg brought that up too during our CAM, like, hey, we've got some great colleges students here who would love to be involved. And we actually didn't have the community college folks at our, our action meetings. Do you remember how you approached the community college? Like, was there somebody that was already involved that then kind of took it back, or did you guys outright approach them?
We outright approached them. It was up at the technical school. So I cannot, Allison may remember, or I can't quite remember right now the process of who did it, so.
Yeah, so we had on the coalition board, or not the board, but committee, an OT from Providence Hospital, our local hospital, and she had gone to this, or she knew about the vocational school and recommended that we contact them. And so just email conversation, and they were excited and we were excited, and yeah, so it's just.
Allison, did they bring their own supervisors?
No, I don't recall. I think they had, it's been a while. I think we had, they had us fill out some forms, like, are they doing this, this, and this?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, no, that sounds really, old school.
It was great, yeah, really helpful.
I would be interested, Jennifer, in how you brought together the SMART team, because I think bringing together the schools is really important. I think when we have, and getting involved with ITC or Infant Toddler Connections and then our Early Learning Center, but then actually beyond, I was struck by that testimony of the 18-year-old, the kids that have been missed, right? Because we haven't had early screening and continue to be missed, and kind of getting that together so that the school is on our side and we're all working together in collaboration.
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I think Raina and Allison could talk a little bit about the screening. So what happened in the beginning was there was on the initial coalition, as we were forming the coalition coming to, there were actually the school, the heads of the special services and the schools were involved in those early meetings. So they were pulled in right from the beginning. We have actually, there was a lady's name was Becky Turnbull, but anyway, Becky was involved. She was a very strong advocate of trying to work together. We had, again, and probably you do in your communities, before that started, we had a really good relationship in general with the school districts. Because we're small, we're the major pediatric practice in our area, and I think we had gone to the schools. Everything helps, right? So in the beginning, we used to give talks to the schools and all that kind of stuff. If the school asked us to do something, we would come, we'd meet for IEPs, we'd do all that. So we had connections. And then when this came up, so the school, one of the things we did for screenings and stuff is we actually started giving talks. Schools, teachers have to get so many education hours. So what we started doing is we offered to go talk at all those things. So say, okay, let's go talk about autism. Let's talk about screening. Let's talk about what we would need to know. And they just brought us in. So we talked, I know, both in our local schools and then some of the larger areas. And we also, by the way, brought in, started meeting with school nurses. We tried to figure out every way that we could make connections with the school district and be available. And I think that formed those links. That's sort of, I hope that answers your question, but that's sort of how we did. And then of course we screened we screened always. And I think we had the same relationship with Raina and Allison, with you guys. It's so important. So important. So that's how we got. And I will be very honest, it's hard. This has been going on for how many, 7 years now we've been meeting. We meet once a month. It's all volunteer except for the nurse coordinator. And, school districts don't always show up. I mean, we have times when they do and times when they don't. And it's an ongoing challenge to keep, when the main champion might not be there, to keep people involved. But so it's a trick. I think we have to re-up our engagement with them at times, but now we're a known entity, but it's been a challenge.